hatred for the Tory party that inflicted those bitter experiences on me. So far as I am concerned, they are lower than vermin. They condemned millions of first-class people to semi-starvation.
The impact was instant and disastrous. Within hours of the speech, the newspaper headlines led not on the doors opening to the NHS, but on the minister's dramatic insult to half the nation.
Even though Mr. Bevan calls us vermin, we must regard them as brothers with whom, yes, certainly, we must regard the other half of our fellow countrymen as brothers apart from their politics and realise that we have much in common.
Bevan's vermin speech echoed down the corridors of time. There were numerous attacks, and some pretty vile ones too. The house he was living in with his wife Jenny Lee at that time, human waste was put through the letterbox. Never actually left him. That ghost of the vermin speech was always haunting. He was the object of a lot of personal vilification for a long time after that.
Bevan's speech had threatened to overshadow the birth of his service. But throughout Britain, the medical profession, many of whom had resisted him, worked to the last minute in preparation for the potential flood of millions of new patients. The time had come. Finally, on the stroke of midnight on July the 5th, Bevan's dream became a reality. The National Health Service opened for business as promised.
At 30 seconds past midnight, there's a telephone call. Mrs. Bloggs, my child is very ill, come at once. I had a bed, got in the car, drove to Mrs. Bloggs, knocked on the door. Hello, what's the trouble? I just wanted to see if the NHS works and you'd come out. I will claim to see the first NHS patient.
That morning, all over the country, 50 million Britons woke up to a new world of free healthcare for the masses.
My grandfather wrote a book, The National Health Service in Great Britain. On the morning of the appointed day, 5th July 1948, the whole gigantic scheme wheeled into line. It was like the slow opening of the immense hydraulic doors of the vaults of a great bank.
Hello, surgery switchboard.
Hello, outpatient appointments.
Yes, you could see Dr. Midgley this afternoon at 2:20, or one of the other doctors this evening.
I rode my bicycle and I got to the turn-off, which would take me up East Street, where the surgery was on the corner, and there were all these people. There must have been 30, 40 people all queuing up to go in. So I opened the door with trepidation, I might tell you, and ran up the stairs like a bat out of hell before these people followed me up. It was quite frightening, I'd be perfectly honest, because I didn't know what was going to happen, I hadn't got a clue. Our little waiting room was full to overflowing, and we got people on the landing and down the stairs.
With the NHS less than half a day old, Bevan paid a triumphant visit to Trafford Park Hospital in Manchester.
I don't think these days you'd see the excitement that happened on that day. People were so proud of it, and they were so proud that they picked Manchester. It was like a wedding. People went out and, like the consultants, they bought the best clothes and whatnot. And the matron had a new uniform. And the nurses their aprons were starched to the last. There was no pomp attached to Bevan. He didn't miss anybody out and smiled all the time and didn't appear to rush anything. And if he missed anybody out, he went back to shake hands with them. They couldn't believe that a minister could behave as normal as he did. Everybody was waving banners and thought that, that the Lord had come nearly. Yeah.
Bevan toured the hospital like a proud father. He stopped off at the bedside of a 13-year-old patient, Sylvia Diggory, and posed for an historic photograph that came to symbolise everything he had fought for.
So many of the opponents to the NHS had given him very bad publicity. So I suppose, in a way, I was expecting somebody who would be rather like a typhoon descending on us, you know, rather full of his own importance. He was charming, absolutely charming. He had a very nice, lilting voice. He spoke to me, you know, not as a child. There was no speaking down. He was pleasant to everyone, and he was absolutely euphoric. He'd a very happy man.
Against all the odds, Bevan had delivered, both on his 6-month timetable and on the basic promise of the NHS. Comprehensive healthcare for every person in Britain was now completely free, from the simplest ailment to the most urgent surgery.
That was the big change, that you didn't ever have to ask people who's paying. People were absolutely delighted to find somebody who gave what appeared to be a private service on the NHS that they didn't have to pay for. I actually had a brass plate made, engraved on it was "No private patients." I was very proud of that.
Patients were so touchingly grateful and appreciative of anything. And I was very touched because they kept giving me, as if I was responsible for it, they kept giving me little gifts.
The public embraced Bevan's free health scheme with open arms. The NHS's opponents had predicted it would be subject to abuse. At first, it seemed they may have been right.
People began coming in with lists of things they wanted on the free prescriptions. Cotton wool, aspirin, bottle of gin.
There were frivolous demands. There were a few people. You've got to remember, this is a time of great shortages, clothes rationing and so on, as well as food rationing. You'd get people who wanted to get rolls of gauze to make net curtains out of. But the overwhelming majority of people realised that if the NHS is an expression of solidarity, you can't afford to have people thieving from it.
But more seriously, the NHS was buckling under the sheer weight of demand. The demand of countless illnesses and problems that had gone untreated, because, until now, patients couldn't pay the price.
All sorts of things crawled out from the woodwork where, as soon as people recognised that they could get to the doctor and be seen, they